You know, I actually love this saying where it's like the greatest threat to the world is the belief that someone else will save it.
Yeah.
And that was totally me.
So, favourite drink?
Oh my goodness. Like it's a drink that we call nice drink in my household, and it's literally...
Excuse my ignorance, because I don't know anything about any of this stuff. Do the 5 different types of white bay, do they travel together? Kia ora. If you love listening to successful women and their inspiring journeys, you're in the right place. So hit subscribe and like the podcast to help us shine a light on women's voices and their powerful stories. So join the movement, get involved, give us some feedback in the comments and who you'd like to see on the show. We truly believe that every woman's story deserves to be heard. Now, back to the podcast. Kia ora everyone, welcome back to Golden Glimmers. Your host, Zoe Tomlinson-Rout, and today I have a special guest with me, our very first politician on the show, and advocate. So I'd love for you to introduce yourself. I think that names are super important. I have a husband called Maru who always gets called Murray or Mary. So I'd love if you could introduce yourself with your name, and then if there's like a story behind your name as well. Like my name means life, and that was kind of why my parents gifted me that name. So does yours have a little thing like that?
Yeah, oh, kia ora Zoe. Yeah, so my name is Lan Pham. But my full name is Lan Pham, and Lan itself means orchid, but when you add the Lan, it's precious orchid.
Oh, beautiful.
And Pham is Vietnamese, which is part of my heritage, and it's a super popular name. Yeah. Like Lan Pham is kind of like the Rachel Smith.
Yeah,
in New
yeah,
Zealand.
right.
Like, there's thousands of us in Vietnam.
That must be really interesting, like, so here everyone's like, wait, how do I say it? Is it Lan? Is it Lan? Like that kind of thing. And then over there, it's like there's a gazillion of you, and you're like, okay, cool, this is nice.
Yeah, I love being, you know, the kind of interesting name here in Aotearoa. But yeah, once I get to Vietnam, it's like dime a dozen.
And is there a reason why you cut it down, or is that just like how, like, Joseph is Joe? Like, or is it to make it easier for people?
It was really just my parents' choice.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not sure if they thought the pronunciation would be harder with Lan but that my given name was Lan.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think they, you know, the meaning of the names and that kind of thing means so much to them. I think they, you know, were happy to expand it for like my sort of full formal name.
Yeah, I love that. I love when people know the answer, or you know, the meaning behind the names as well. Like some people are just called Sam Smith, hey, and it's just Sam Smith. But I think that it's like nice when parents have taken the time to get something that's like sentimental, or you know, has some sort of beautiful name, which yours does. Yeah. So I got a few warm-up questions for you before we get into the interview. So favorite drink?
Oh my goodness. Like it's a drink that we call nice drink in my household, and it's literally it's kind of like this like orangey like syrup, like ginger syrup with just like fizzy water.
Yeah. And do you like have a jug of this? Is it hot, cold?
It's cold, and you like use the O Bubbles fizzer.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know, like kind of soda stream, but it's kiwi. Yeah. O Bubbles, and then Barker's syrup, and you're away.
Yeah, right. Nice drink. Nice drink. Do you want a nice drink?
It's so refreshing. Yeah. And I just love it.
Do you know what star sign you are?
Pisces.
Okay, cool. And do you know much about Pisces? Like, do you know if you kind of loosely align with the characteristics and traits of it?
Well, I really do in that, like, I know it's like fish. Yeah. And my specialty is like native fish.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So there's like and I'm definitely a water baby. I love the water and our rivers and oceans and that.
Yeah, cool. Okay, well this kind of leads into my third question, but if you had to choose between like say like a spa bath, an ocean or river dip, and then like a cold plunge, what would you choose?
Gotta be ocean or river.
Yeah.
Like spas are okay if you've like done something intense before and then you're like chilling out, but I just love the elements and just plunge. I mean, the plunge just sounds too jarring. Yeah. Whereas I do love a good, river jump or ocean plunge or something.
And you feel real wholesome when you do like the river or the ocean, eh? You're like,
Never regret it.
actually, I'm in one with nature right now. Yeah. Oh, perfect. Okay, cool. So now getting into the interview, like I don't want it to be so hard and, formal questions and that sort of thing. So can you just tell me a little bit about like your upbringing, your early years, what did childhood look and feel like for you? And we'll kind of just go through there gradually.
Cool. No, I'd love to. So I always describe like me growing up as just being in this total state of like ignorant bliss.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
So I just loved life and I loved the world and everything was awesome. And I do love that movie, by the way, the Lego movie.
Yeah, everything.
Everything was awesome. And yeah, I mean, I really just kind of thought everything was sweet. Like I had 5 siblings.
Right. Where are you in the...
I'm sort of like, I like to say second equal, but I'm technically third.
Yeah.
I've got a twin sister and she's old. She's technically 4 minutes older than me.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of middle-ish.
Twin sister, like identical?
Non-identical.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we do look very similar and we do like people think we're each other all the time. And so I've got an older brother, sort of like boys at each end and then 4 girls in the middle.
Right, yeah, cool.
And yeah, we just had the best time growing up like in Te Whanganui-a-Tara in Wellington.
Yeah.
And yeah, I sort of just believed that the world was like governed by like wise, sensible leaders who just made really good decisions. And so I was like, yeah, I'll just like have a nice life. Like I went through like all my schooling and even my undergrad, like really, like I call it not using my brain. Like when people would be like, oh, this is an issue where there is no right answer, like you just critically think about it. I would be like, what a waste of my time and their time. Like, I don't know the answer. They clearly know the answer.
What's the point?
Yeah. I was really like hands off and brains off. Like sort of, I wasn't engaged in the world basically.
Yeah.
And, I actually love this saying where it's like the greatest threat to the world is the belief that someone else will save it.
Yeah.
And that was totally me.
Yeah, right. So, like, in when you were in this stage of being a little bit, like, ignorant and, that sort of thing, which is, like, very normal and relatable and that sort of thing. Yeah. What did you get up to? Like, growing up in Wellington, what did that look and feel like?
Oh, it was cool. It was really cool. It was just, like, lots of nature time, like, down at the beach or go out for a bushwalk. We actually, where we lived was basically like council reserve land right behind our house. Cool. And it was all, essentially at the start it was all gorse, but then it all was like regenerating bush. And so we could like go on little adventures down there. And my mum in particular was really into like taking us camping and on little tramps and that kind of thing. Yeah, cool. And my dad was just basically working 24/7 to like keep us all afloat.
Yeah, that's a big household.
It was massive.
Support. Yeah.
It was massive.
Yeah.
And because he had family coming from Vietnam, would often like either live with us or stay with us. So, they were supporting, extended family as well. And it was just kind of part of how things worked at our household. So yeah, it was kind of always like open door and everybody eats and that kind of thing.
And do you think like, when you were younger, did you appreciate that, like, having so many siblings was actually a big family? Or were you like, because, I went to a Catholic high school for a while, so if I saw a family that had, like, 11 kids, and I was like, that is a big, family. Yeah. But how did that go, like, within schooling for you and stuff? Like, were you really aware, and were you, like, lonely when you didn't have a gazillion people around you? Or?
Yeah. I don't remember being really aware of it. I do know that we were seen as a big family because I was actually at a Catholic primary school.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But still, not many families had 6 kids. Yeah. And we had this like big red Mitsubishi van that
Yeah.
like our mum would just trundle around with, which was really cool. And then all the friends and cousins and stuff would be in there too.
Cool.
So I wasn't so aware of that, but I do like, I just have this really deep sense of like being lucky. You know, we were lucky, you know, we were never exposed to being like worried about paying the bills or that we'd have food on the table. And we were always sort of, I guess, brought up to be so grateful for what we have, especially because of like my dad's background and coming to New Zealand during the Vietnam War. You know, it was like, that was the real, trauma and heartache.
Yeah.
And yet here we are, and we have, you know, we're in this amazing land. So yeah, I think that was really instilled in us.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then, what happened after high school? When did the kind of...
The cogs slowly start turning. So it was really when I finished my undergrad. So I did my undergrad at Massey in Papoya, Palmerston North.
Yeah.
And it was really after that, like I'd graduated and I realised like I actually had no real practical skills. Like I was like, what am I actually going to do with my life?
So I've researched you a little bit, so I kind of know, but just for our listeners, can you talk about like what you studied and what kind of, you know, as a high school student or someone that was looking at the next steps in terms of their career or whatever, what did that look like? And was there like little part-time jobs that you had kind of leading up to that kind of paved that pathway, or was it random, you know? What was the inspo? And yeah,
great question. I had so many little part-time jobs and summer jobs like while I was a student and like studying and that kind of thing. Some were like totally random. I mean, like lots of like gardening and stuff like that. Working on the ferry as like surveying people on the ferry. I really enjoyed that, apart from when everyone was spewing. But then probably some of the most formative stuff would be someone put me on to the fact that you could volunteer for the Department of Conservation.
Yeah.
And there's a whole bunch of offshore islands in particular where you can get to if you volunteer with docs. So I was like
flights paid.
This is amazing. You'd get your own way there.
Yeah.
I remember one time I was on one of the islands in the Sounds. It was either Maud Island or Long Island. And so, I'd like organised my own ferry over, and then the boat would pick me up from Havelock and boat out to the island. And you'd spend like 10 days or 2 weeks on these islands. And that was where, I think those were really formative because I could see like native wildlife that you just never see or hear about. Yeah. And I was like, what? Like, these are like they're sort of like another worlds. And I was like, oh, if only we could have this.
So precious and preserved.
Yeah. So that kind of got me really into like ecology and I guess the study of science and the interactions between creatures and nature and humans.
Yeah.
And so I studied ecology at Massey.
Yeah.
And that was where I started learning about native fish.
Yeah.
And lots of people were like, what? Like, do we have native fish? I actually thought trout were native. Like, that's how little I knew about. And it's okay if people do think trout are native.
Yeah, well, maybe some of our listeners have just learnt their like first fact of the day. Yeah.
Exactly. And basically what I mean when I say native fish is like, everyone's probably heard about whitebait.
Yeah.
But whitebait are actually the babies or the juvenile fish of like 5 incredible different native fish species, which we never talk about or hear about. But some of them, like for example, giant kakapo, are like, they can grow up to 1/2 metre in length. They are absolutely stunning. They basically have like these like Egyptian kind of like glitter gold patterns on their backs, and they have these like gold eyeshadow.
Yeah.
and they just like glide
They're like
through
the
the water.
Cleopatra of the water.
They are so cool.
Excuse my ignorance, because I don't know anything about any of this stuff. Do the 5 different types of whitebait, do they travel together? Or are they like in their own group?
No, you're right. So essentially, so they basically all get mixed up when they all come back into the fresh water from being at sea when they're really little.
Yeah.
So they basically all come back together as part of the whiteback catch. Yeah. But if they manage to dodge the nets or whatever number of threats, because there's a whole bunch of things which nail them, if they manage to dodge that, then they make their way upstream into a river or lake, and then they grow into like their adult forms. Yeah, right. And that's when they're really distinctive and you can actually tell them apart. Like some people who have like a really expert can tell them as whitebait. Yeah. There are some distinctive features, but it's really hard. So, and they all look similar.
Okay, second question, because this is like your area of expertise. You like a vegetarian or like pescatarian or like is that, because you actually understand how special and Yeah,
well, I don't eat whitebait.
See,
but,
funny.
But I'm not actually a vegetarian. Yeah. I'm definitely like a meat reducer. Yeah. But I love, like, if there's one thing that I'm not into when it comes to humans, it's labels. Yeah. And some people, like, all power to them with like veganism or vegetarian. I'm like, yes, like amazing. I love just sort of being a human being and enabling people to do that and it being okay.
Yeah, so, that's really interesting. Yeah, funny. And I think that there almost needs to be, in some ways, like a name for that. What do you call yourself? A non-labeler?
Like a conscious human being, or like, I don't know, a deliberate, like you're making deliberate choices every day.
Value-based individual. That's just operating based on what suits you rather than like what fits in this certain box.
Well, yeah, and I think it's about what fits with the community and with like a whole bunch of factors, right? And I mean, I love like, especially like happy meat, it's like sustainably killed, sourced, hunted, whatever. Then that's cool. And I guess I've worked enough in particularly like pest control for dock and that kind of thing. Like I'm not precious about it. And, I do think that like, life and death, it's all part of one beautiful cycle. And that expresses itself in numbers of ways, but
That is such a like cool and insightful way to start the episode. Oh my goodness, I'm like, we're only like just starting. I don't even reckon we've taken over 10 minutes yet, and we've just got to like some like deep, like soulful, values-based kind of thing. So thank you. Like that was a hot start. Good job. This isn't your first rodeo, eh? Maybe in like long form, but I also feel like
I just love like, and especially you bring that out, Zoe, because it's like I love like meeting people where they are, like it's like if you want to go there, I want to go there. And
cool. Okay, so that's what you did. You were kind of doing some volunteer stuff for dock. Was there someone in your world that, like, I don't know, like a cousin or a sister or a boss that you had or whatever, that even planted that seed around the dock thing, like, or a teacher? Or
I honestly cannot for the life of me remember, but I remember my mum being like super encouraging, and my mum was definitely that kind of nature appreciator, like gardener, like just loved making sure we got out into nature. And she actually passed away from skin cancer when I was 19.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And no, thank you. It's really like, I mean, it was horrible and tragic, especially for her, like she had raised these 6 kids, and my youngest brother at the time was 11. And it was like, at least for me, I was kind of like almost fully formed in a way.
Knew her, you have like a lot of memories with her that you actually can retain for life, right? Because you're at that, okay.
But for my younger siblings it was really hard. And so I credit her for like a lot of encouragement and yeah, just instilling in us that you just can't take, well, not only can you not take life for granted generally, but, you know, our natural environment, like it's not, I've never believed that it was like a nice to have, you know, like it's just this absolutely fundamental thing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was really what kind of steered me down that path, I guess.
And if that happened when you were 19, were you kind of like in your first year of uni or around that point?
I think I was actually in my third year, because I've sort of the age, like I started at 17, just where my birthday is. I'm kind of at the younger age.
Yeah,
so I think I was 17, 18, 19.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was in my last year.
Right.
And I think the first term of my last year.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm Jan the 15th. So, like, I had just turned 18 when we went down to Dunedin to study. So I know what you mean. Like, if you were kind of, what are you, like a March?
March.
Yeah, right. That makes 100% sense. Was that your first kind of, like, big loss? Yeah, right, because that changes everything, right? Like, it's so different. Not saying that it's, like, easier or whatever, but if you have a 85-year-old grandparent that passes away, then you kind of know that that point is coming and that sort of thing. But it's a whole other thing when someone at a different age and stage of life, you know, when that happens. And obviously, duration of sickness and stuff plays a part into preparation and stuff, but still, like, if you've they say it's like that front row of a funeral, right? Like once you've experienced it in that front row of a funeral, then it kind of changes you forever. And so I 100% can appreciate like that everything's kind of temporary as well, right? Like you can't just like think that like you're going to go see your parents in 12 months time because that's what fits your schedule. Like you kind of got to be like, well, that would be amazing if, but yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, you just can't take anything for granted. And I mean, some people see that as like scary.
Yeah.
But I guess I, for whatever reasons and factors, have kind of seen it as really like freeing and invigorating and like motivating to like live your life and, you know, appreciate the people who you love and the things you love and, you know, fight for things. And so yeah, that's where it comes from, I guess.
You seem like someone that's very like grounded and present. Do you think that that also might have had a part? Like, you know, I felt like for a lot of my life I was kind of in fight or flight mode. Like I was just like, I wouldn't say that I was so like blissfully like kind of unaware or whatever, but like almost just like just constantly going through the motions and on autopilot, but not necessarily like in a great way, just doing the shit.
Yeah.
Until I had like a loss that was really unexpected for me, and then I was like, oh shit, so you need to be here. Like you need to actually, don't worry about what's in an hour, don't worry about like, you know, what's for dinner tonight or whatever. Like you just actually need to take a like minute at a time, love. And that was a big like rude awakening for me, but actually kind of like what I needed. But yeah, you kind of just seem like you've got that aura about you where you're like, I'm here now and we're going to do the podcast and I'm going to answer your questions.
Well, it is. I mean, I do always have this sense, and you know, sometimes it can panic people. I know it panics my husband when I talk about like urgency and like, you know, time's ticking.
Yeah.
But I don't see it. It doesn't panic me. It like motivates me.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I see it also in different ways, like crippling people in ways. And I guess in times in my life, it has, you know, I have kind of been my worst, you know, my
own worst enemy.
Own worst enemy.
That's a mouthful to get out of, yeah.
Yeah, because I have been like, we need to do everything like right now because there might not be a tomorrow. And so, yeah, I guess I've been through enough cycles of that to like learn about how to manage that. And I feel like I'm in a really good and well supported place right now.
Yeah, nice. Well, that's perfect. Okay, so we were on the Cleopatra fish. You took that was your thing. You did some volunteering and stuff, and then you decided that that's what you wanted to study.
Yeah.
When you went to uni.
Yeah.
Went through your 3 years, went through a massive life event, which I'm sure would have had, you know, significant impact on you, but also like sometimes people can't really remember that stage either, right? Because
Yeah.
they're getting through. And then what was next for you? You decided to do some postgrad or some...
So basically, yeah, I was like, okay, I've finished university. And remember, like, I hadn't engaged my brain still.
Yeah.
I was just like, yeah, so I finished
I
university.
passed it.
What am I going to do now, kind of thing. And I found this course called Conservation Corps, and it was down in Dunedin where we'd sort of done trips to the South Island, not many, but I was really interested in the South Island, and I loved the idea of going down to Dunedin and doing this course. And it was like all practical stuff. So it was like how to like use a chainsaw and do pest control and plant plants and actually stuff, like real stuff. And so I did that for 5 months, and as part of that you could do work experience with dock teams. So I was naturally like gravitating towards the native fish team. And it just so happens that the South Island is essentially like this biodiversity hotspot for, like, there's these whitebait that are this family of galaxids or native fish. And the name galaxid, by the way, is because the people who gave them that galaxid name named them after the galaxy of the stars.
Totally, it sounds like some alien stuff going. Yeah,
it's very romantic. And so, but the whitebait species are the one that migrate to sea and back, whereas in sort of Canterbury, Otago and Southland, there's this group of galaxids that don't do the migration thing. They're just stuck in the stream or river where they live, and they live there their entire life. And that's what makes them really rare, because so much has unfortunately happened to their habitat that they're only left in a few small pockets. So I went down to Dunedin and started meeting all these like amazing fish, and I was like, oh, so these are like really threatened. So why isn't anyone doing anything about it?
Yeah.
Why isn't someone talking about it? Like, shouldn't you be like protecting them, or shouldn't you be? Or like, like, and everyone was just sort of like, oh yeah, they're really endangered, but like no one really knows about them, and we're just kind of doing what we can. And I was like, well, like if I can care about them, then surely other people can. And that kind of started, I guess, my native fish journey. And so I went back to uni after a few years of working. I ended up working then. No, in Dunedin.
Right.
At Otago.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I ended up working for Department of Conservation as a freshwater ranger for a few years.
Yeah.
And then went back to uni and did my master's. And this is when the cogs really started turning, because I was coming into contact with like regional councillors or even MPs, and I was like really alarmed, because I was seeing like how little they knew about the world or about nature, but how like damaging their decisions were.
Yeah.
And yet they were just like confidently just like going ahead with stuff. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, are these the people who are actually in charge of our country?
Yeah.
And that was, that
How old
really,
would you have been then? Is that like kind of mid-20s?
24.
Yeah, cool, okay, yeah.
Where things just kind of clicked in, and I was like, far out, like, I'm a human, I can use my voice, I can say things, I can like try affect change. And so after my master's, I got together with a group of friends at uni and started a charitable trust called Working Waters Trust, and that was all about like freshwater education and restoration. So basically, where these native fish still lived, which was not many places, we'd partner them up with like the local farmer, the school, the runaka, or the like basically hapu group that were there, and we'd just all like do little native fish restoration projects. It was cool. It was really cool.
So growing up, you never envisioned yourself as a like going down the world of politics and stuff?
No way.
Yeah, so that is so interesting to me. So it like that 24 kind of age was when you're like, oh shit, if no one's gonna like take a real notice of this, or they're like making decisions but they're not understanding the like carry-on effect and that sort of thing, or looking at the problem but not really analysing like what they've done to get there. Yeah, right. That's super cool and super interesting, right? Because I was like wondering when I was researching you, I was like, okay, so is it because she grew up in the North Island, like close to Wellington, and like that seems to be a little bit more front and centre for people from that space around going in politics, whereas I think for like us in the South Island, we're kind of like, oh, that's like, that's like for the super smart people that are like, on that path and probably want to be like lawyers and go up that way. Yeah. That is fascinating about you.
And well, that is one of the key like assumptions I think people make, that people who are politicians or who end up in Parliament somehow know something or are smarter. I mean, some people, don't get me wrong, some people disparage politicians and they're like, they're freaking idiots and all the barrage. But there is this general assumption that it's like you have to, be something or be someone to be a politician. And it's like, no.
I love that. I love that for you and for the Greens, that you're actually there because you're like passionate as. Like it was never like, I want to grow up and be the Prime Minister one day and like this is what I have to do to get there. You're there because you give a shit. That's like iconic. That should be your tagline. Like, I'm here because I mean and I live and I breathe this stuff. Like that's cool. And maybe it is your tagline.
Well, I mean, I think every politician would probably believe that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I know that there are the kind of politics people who just love politics. I don't love politics at all. Yeah. I don't like the politics. Yeah. I'm only there, because apparently in 2025 we still need to make it political to want a relatively stable climate, to want to care about each other like as human beings or as in community, to like want clean, accessible drinking water or rivers and streams and lakes we can swim in. Like it still blows my mind today, and it did when I was on council and everything like this, that I say, clean drinking water is so important. Like it feels like so jarring because I feel like how stupid is that I'm saying that?
Like, why is it a conversation piece? How is not everyone on that same page? And then why are we arguing about it? Like, there's kind of two pieces in there. Yeah, right.
It's bizarre.
Yeah.
So, I kind of see it like I'm only in politics because I feel like we've totally lost sight of the fundamentals of like caring about each other as human beings and caring for Te Tai, our environment. Yeah. And if we can just sort that out, I'll be out of there. And I'm really looking forward to that too.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll go back to, that's what you decided to study. You did your master's, you set up the charitable trust, and then where from there?
Yeah, so that's when, again, I was getting more and more involved with like our political leaders. So I was getting quite involved in like council decisions. Yeah. And by this time, I'd actually moved from Dunedin and Otago to Ōtautahi here in Christchurch because a lot of our projects were more and more in Canterbury. And so, I moved up here and got more and more involved with the council and what at that stage was called the zone committees, where it's basically like local governance committees for water. And again, I was like, far out, like I can see how we've got to where we have, because like if these are the only people who are at the decision making table, then of course you're not going to like want to punish your own business or your family's business or those of your community. And I saw particularly here for the South Island, Naita who were often represented on these communities, but there'd be like one or two individuals and there'd be like this lone voice kind of advocating for freshwater protection or mahinga kai values, where they can actually like gather kai, or anyone can gather kai, not just for Māori. And so, I was like, far out, this is not, it just felt so imbalanced. And I was like, this isn't right. Like, if I want to see someone there, like, you know, supporting this voice for like protecting people's health and the planet's health, like maybe that could be me.
Yeah, so you were pretty young, kind of having a seat on some of those like tables with key stakeholders and decision makers and stuff, right? Like kind of like that mid-20s and that, like, how was that for you?
Yeah. Like I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed, it's funny because you mentioned earlier, like sort of maybe like loving being around people, because I was around people. So like I'm a total introvert. Like yeah. So
it's a trick, eh? It's just a trick. Yeah, I actually, because it's actually not about how you turn up, it's how you recharge, and that's why I think people don't understand the whole extrovert introvert thing. Eh? Like, no, we've just been conditioned to be like, okay, it's time to go, you know. And if I want to get a point across, then I can't like sit in the corner at home. That doesn't work, which is real annoying.
Exactly, and I love people. I love like who they are and their stories and how we can like work together as human beings, but I like would prefer that I just get to go, you know, hang out by myself and like have a nice time. But yeah, this role has really helped me like I guess appreciate and understand how no one person has all the answers, and actually it genuinely is having conversations and like working things out together that you get anywhere. And so particularly with my work in freshwater, I'd often be like walking into quite, you know, like more rural environments where there's often, you know, more men or all men, and then being like, what are you doing here? Like, are you lost? Kind of thing.
Especially if like the lens or approach that you are taking and looking at is quite different from theirs as well, right? So it's like you when you're passionate about what you like see and believe, but you're also like an active listener and like really curious to hear their perspective and try and get outcomes that kind of work for people and that sort of thing. But I could imagine, like it would have been pretty hard for them to receive you at some point, say. And I like can relate to this. So my whole career has really been in the construction sector and being like, you know, the only young female at the table and that sort of thing. And like the rude awakening when you put these people on a pedestal for so long and you're like, oh, they're so successful, so they must be so clever or whatever. And then every table that you kind of move up to, you're like, what? Like, is this it? And the same, eh? Like when you go from kind of being like, hey, can you guys listen to me or acknowledge me and that kind of thing, to being like, oh, okay, yeah, we've all got our stuff.
Exactly. And I think I've had enough experiences in those situations where, like, you know, I've been told, say, by a group of guys, oh, you're wrong, you don't understand, you know, like you have, you know, you don't have a right to sort of have an opinion in this kind of thing. Then seeing that totally change and them actually growing their own awareness and understanding and them being like, you know, making a good decision that I know, like I really respect, I guess, like the dignity of each person to like basically come round and like understand things. And I guess that comes from me and my like such limited understanding that now I realize that I had. And yet I was just kind of confidently striding through life with like no understanding. And so now I feel like I've got a little bit of understanding about things, and I appreciate in others that, you know, they might be on their own journeys, but I will never like write people off because it's like, no, we need to figure this out.
Yeah. So did you, you know, like say in my career, I had a few moments of kind of, you know, when you're at those meetings or you're having those really tough conversations and it almost starts to feel a little bit like personal, where you're like, wait, are we even talking about this right now? Because it kind of feels like that. You know, those moments where you kind of feel like you're holding back the tears or you feel your chin like move a little bit or you're kind of like, I need to go to the bathroom and stuff. Did you have like those moments growing up or Yeah,
I totally like resonate with that. There's something that happens in my makeup when things get really intense and I feel like you know, like you're about to cry or something. Like, you know, the pressure in the room is like, the intensity is rising and people are like upset or like angry. And for some reason for me, that is when I am like most clear.
Yeah, right. That's amazing.
And so I'm like, I can see the emotion. And it's so interesting, isn't it? Because there is, you know, just the general perception that like, oh, women are so emotional and they just bring their emotions to it. I'm like, it's the complete opposite. Like, there's so much, like, generally emotional responses from men, and it's actually the women who are holding it down, but then get kind of like told that they're being emotional.
Totally. Well, and I think that the other thing is that they're kind of, I have to be real careful because I don't want to sound like a big like man hater, but I feel like there's also this thing in society where they're allowed to feel their emotions. They're allowed to like swear and call people fucking useless and all of that sort of thing. But if we're like holding back or suppressing all of our emotions because we're kind of being taught to do that, and then we show any sort of inkling that we give a fuck, then we're being too emotional, eh? And it's like, I haven't sworn, I haven't got up and slammed my hand on anything. Like, I'm just trying to like make sense of what you're saying right now. But yeah, that's super interesting. I probably don't have that same thing where I'm super clear in those moments. Like, I feel like I can sense everyone's energy and I'm like hyper aware of it, you know, where I'm like, oh, he's crossed his arms now and he's leaning forward and that sort of thing. But I think that that's probably a little bit of my like people pleasing tendencies as well, where I'm like, oh, he's unhappy, how do I solve that problem, rather than just like letting him have a moment, you know? Yeah, okay, cool. So where from there?
So I was on the trust and working for that and getting more involved with council. But at the time we had a national-led government. John Key was our Prime Minister. And they were doing really bad stuff to freshwater, like really bad. Like it was the whole swimmable rivers debate where it was like, you know, should we be able to just wade in our rivers, like i.e. just go up to the knee, but you know, God forbid, don't splash it in your mouth or your kid's mouth because they'll get sick. You know, they were saying that wadeable rivers should be our standard, and everyone was like, no, we want swimmable rivers. And so I was just like
clean green New Zealand, eh?
Clean green New Zealand. I know, it's bizarre.
But don't swim in the rivers, like,
just wade. Just wade. And so there was kind of that going on, and I was just feeling so like, you know, pretty hopeless about it. Like, I was like, this is so frustrating. And I was loving the restoration work with the trust, but essentially what was happening was we were operating in like these little bubbles of like 400 metres or 800 metres of stream. And then over the fence, there'd be like this massive bulldozer coming through and like taking out all the vegetation and flattening the land for like pivot irrigators. There'd be like wetlands being drained over there. And I was just like, this is just not.
No, like succession, or yeah.
Well, I was just like, it's not cutting it. Like, it's not enough. It's not at a scale where we're actually going to make a real difference. And I was increasingly seeing, I guess, like the political stuff is like, maybe that's where you can make a difference. And anyway, I like kind of threw the towel in for a year because I took up this role on Rangitahua Rao Island in the Kermadec to run the science and biodiversity contracts for DOC there. And that was amazing. So
how was that? Like, because that's quite a change. So you said you threw the towel in. Is it just like a super frustrating kind of like stage where you just held on for as long as you could? Or were you quite aware in terms of, I need a change and I'll revisit it later? Like, how did that...
It was basically a change for me because the trust, we still kept the trust operating. And we ended up running the trust for 10 years, which was awesome. And we just wrapped it up the other year. But it was really, for me, I was just like, I just need like a change. I feel so frustrated and I feel like I'm not, like, what's the point a little bit? And so, yeah, heading to Rangitahua Rao Island was incredible. Like, this island is alive. Like, it is this rock. Like, if you've never, you know, a lot of people won't have heard of Rao Island, but it's basically Aotearoa's northernmost island. So it's still part of New Zealand, but it's halfway between New Zealand and Tonga. So it's like a 5-day sailing trip away from civilization.
5 days?
You can't fly there unless you actually can't fly there. Not even the Air Force can actually get a plane properly up there. Right. So basically you have to boat there, or if it was an emergency, they could basically get the Navy ships halfway and then a chopper could go grab someone in an emergency or something.
Right, like you can't even chopper because it's too far?
Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah, just on a little side note, so we go down to Potamut Island, like, which is one of the TT Islands.
Oh, wow.
So we go, because Moru has blood rights through there, so I know a little bit about island life, but we have to chop it on or off. Like, it's not really safe to boat. They did back in the day, and they'd literally, like, there'd be a guy that would, like, chuck a kid onto, like, them on the rocks, and, like, you could definitely die, and someone did die, like, but gnarly, but that's quite different to, like, a 5-day sail.
It's epic. Rao's kind of similar. There's no safe harbour, so it kind of depends on, because it's like literally this rock in the middle of the Pacific.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But it's an active volcano as well. So there's like, like the crater lakes are like steaming. There's like hot springs just like pouring out of the beaches. Humpback whales migrate past there with like their calves and everything. It's just like alive.
Wait, so do people live on the island or do you just visit?
Yeah, so dock staff did live there. So when I was there, there'd be like 7 people living there.
Yeah, all year round.
Team. We'd basically do like every 3 months, a ship would come up and like change people and like resupply the island and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's really like in the middle of nowhere.
Off-grid generator.
Yeah, so we've got solar panels and like lots of diesel, basically.
Yeah, right. This is so interesting.
It's crazy. Yeah, so I was running like the science stuff. So it was kind of like, you put like a weather balloon up every day for Met Service. You monitor the crater lakes to make sure that there's no like crazy volcanic activity that's happening. We were doing like atmospheric monitoring for this Scripps Institute, which is like in California, in terms of like measuring the carbon in the atmosphere. And then there was the biodiversity on the island, which there's no predators. So literally there's like kakariki just like hopping around like mice on the ground. There's like tui galore. There's the whales, the dolphins, like it's a marine sanctuary right around the island as well.
Yeah,
so
seals and...
No seals, like it's too northern.
Yeah, right.
Although I'm sure if like some seal found it, maybe they would hang out there.
Yeah, because there's heaps of seals down on the island, but that's obviously like more towards Antarctica.
Well, it's kind of like subtropical.
Yeah,
maybe
right.
it's too warm up there for them.
Interesting.
But yeah, it was just an incredible experience. And it was really there when I really started to, I guess, like think about the world more deliberately, because it was like, because I was like, this is like so incredible, this place. And, why can't people experience this? And why can't we have this kind of life, back on the mainland in Aotearoa? And it was there that I realised like the boat would get me back to Christchurch a week before the local government elections. So I was just like, man, I'm just going to run for council.
Boom.
Why not? Yeah, and it was also like a time when kind of like the global awareness about climate change was really like starting. Yeah. And there were I remember this one time there were these, what was called the People's Climate Marches across the whole of the world. And it was really cool. It was kind of like this collective global moment. So I was like, yeah, we're going to run a protest here on Rao Island. And it was really funny because we had this like full protest and we made like all these signs and stuff. And I put out this press release. The entire population of Rao Island turned out for this climate march.
Arms with signs and posts. Yeah.
And we got like international, like in The Guardian, like talked about Rao Island, like turning up for this People's Climate March. And I was like, hell yeah, like we can be part of this. Like, people can be part of this, and we can actually, like, decide to change the world. Like, that's not impossible. Like, people have done it before.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I was like, heck yes, I'm going to run for council. And, you know, people were like, what? Like, why would you do that? Like, you don't have enough experience. You don't have any name recognition. You don't have, like, this or that. And I was like, yeah, well, I mean,
how do I get it?
I'm just going to, like, give it a crack. And
wait, who said that? Like, without naming names.
yeah.
Because, like, we don't have to, you know, like, it's not Mean Girl podcast, but.
Yeah.
Was it, like, because I think that one thing that's really important to note with people like yourself that have a really inspirational story is kind of sharing that when you're on a journey and maybe you're exceeding expectations for yourself or of other people, of what they thought your pathway may look and feel like, not everyone's on the bus with you, right?
Yeah.
So was that kind of commentary, was that from, you know, people close to you, or is that kind of like loud, obnoxious, but kind of like outside voices, or a bit of both?
It's kind of a bit of both. Yeah. Definitely no one like immediate close to me, like, and that's a really safe space for me, which I'm like so relieved about. But yeah, just sort of like people who were quite close, just more like, what? Like, why? Like, what are you doing? Yeah. And then once I was kind of public about it, it was the kind of like, what? Who are you? Like, why are you doing this? Yeah.
Get some haters because you're in the limelight. And
Totally. But it was really cool. It just so happened that this group of people who were part of this group, the People's Choice, came onto the island. And I was like, oh, and one of them was Ruth Dyson, who was running for Labour at the time. And I was like, oh, you're a politician. Like, you might be interested in this. Like, I'm going to run for council. And she was like, oh my goodness. And so anyway, her and her husband convinced me to run with the People's Choice. So yeah, there was a great team of people like on the ground doing like billboards and that kind of stuff. But I was still just stuck on the island. And so I just made videos from the island.
Cool. What year would this have been?
The election was 2016.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So I went up to Rao in 2015 and came back in 2016.
Cool.
But yeah, returned and like 55,000 people had voted for me. I was like highest polling candidate.
I saw that. Yeah, epic. That's super cool. And were you kind of like cool, because obviously that's what you wanted, but then in the same for it to actually like happen and first time round as well, right? Like you had never done this before. And
totally.
That's quite cool. And let's be honest, like People's Choice is kind of the most iconic as well. Like if you're going to be a leader and it's like something meaningful, then I think that People's Choice is what you want.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And I was like, I mean, I was totally shocked and surprised, but it just like really opened my eyes, like these elected roles for these politicians are just like waiting for like normal people, everyday people to actually just run for them.
Yeah.
And actually just give people the option of, like protecting the planet or protecting nature and being kind to each other. Like, yeah, I was just like, from then on, I was like on the recruitment drive hard. I was just like, you could run for council, you could run for, like, have you thought about it?
Yeah, interesting. And so how long were you in that space for?
I did 2 terms on Environment Canterbury.
And then?
And then, basically, because of my background in freshwater, the government then at the time, so the John Key government got voted out and then the Jacinda government came in.
Yeah.
And they put in place some better stuff with freshwater, which included this freshwater commission. And as part of that, they appointed a whole suite of freshwater commissioners who would basically decide on these like regional plans where basically the rules would be set for freshwater. And so I was like, yes, please, like, goodbye politics, like, it's been great. But I would love to be like more in that technical space. And I was appointed as a freshwater commissioner, but it obviously wasn't going to work for me to be political. So I was like, I won't run for council again, which I didn't. But then kind of life happened where Eugenie Sage, who was the Green Party's like absolute stalwart when it came to the environment, she was retiring. And, you know, it was kind of like, well, who's gonna jump in? Yeah, and although like so many people care about the environment and nature in the Green Party, like not many people have an environmental background who are willing to then actually be the politician.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, for better or worse, like, you know, it didn't destroy me on council. So like I would be, keen to give that a whirl because life's short. And, you know, I feel like we are kind of at this real crux point with the world. It's like, are we gonna learn to live like with nature and not essentially like harm ourselves by harming the environment? And so it was kind of like an opportunity that I couldn't let go. So then I was like, okay, well, goodbye, Freshwater Commissioner. And basically ran for the Greens, and here I am.
So you have been with the Greens now for like 8 years, is that right?
No, so I only was just elected at the last election in 2023. So it's actually only been like 18 months.
Right, how's it going? Good.
How's it going? It's going really good in terms of like, for me, I'm loving being on like the Green kaupapa. Yeah. It was like a real change. Like it was a real change for me because I had been very much like, I didn't want to paint on any kind of political colour. I was really like, no, like the environment is so fundamental. Like everyone should have like kick-ass environmental policies, every party. Yeah. And so it was a real like, you know, I had to really work through the kind of like, understand it. The label thing. And being like, nah, this is actually worth it. Like this is actually the pragmatic pathway to actually like make good decisions in the world. Yeah. Well, the one that currently exists in this country where I am right now. Yeah. Yeah. And so, I was like, okay, well, let's do it then. And once I was into that, it felt really good.
I think that that's such a key point of politics that I think like a lot of young people shy away from, like, and maybe don't necessarily vote because they're like, oh, well, like, I don't necessarily fit in one particular box, and I think that there's good values over here around this topic and this, and I think that that's one of the most like fundamental key messages, but you may disagree, but like, hey, look, you don't have to agree with 100%, and you don't have to like paint your home green or like, you know, or red or blue or whatever, but like just go with the ones that like align closest with your values, but like keep revisiting that.
Totally. And I often think, you know, like I'm like, if only we actually like, you know, culturally understood what it means to like really care, like, and care in a way where it's not just like this abstract, like, oh, I care about that, but it's like, I care so much, I'm actually gonna do something, I'm actually gonna take action. And that's what we're really missing, and what I definitely missed as like a young person. You know, it was like I never learnt how to do that and why that mattered. And like, you know, when people were like, oh, you know, young people's voices are important, I was like, no, they're not.
No one's listening.
No, they're not. Yeah, no one's listening.
But not knowing the channels where they actually can listen as well, right? And I think that there's a lot of complaints and stuff out there, but it's like, no, well, if you don't really know the tools or, you know, have the resources or whatever to know that, is that the advice that you would give? Like, because I did have this, you know, script of, but I feel like we've covered it all off anyway, but is that the advice you'd give someone that was maybe interested in having a career that ended up somewhere about where you are? Like, that there are actually tools and resources and forums to have those discussions, and you can contribute. You don't.
Yeah. I think you know, people, like, I really feel like, you know, I believe that we often just give away our voice and our power by just, you know, believing that we don't have any. That's absolutely a thing. And if more of us understood how even like a small group of people of like literally like your friends and family, you know, if you want to change something, you actually can.
Yeah.
And it's just about like voicing it. It's about collectively organizing things. You know, like like I really believe now, like I'm like anything is possible.
Yeah.
Anything is possible.
Just make a move, eh? Just do something.
Totally. And there's this real I kind of feel like, particularly with COVID, but also maybe what's happening internationally at the moment, it kind of feels like the veil has been lifted on this kind of idea that, oh, this is just how things are. This is how things work. This is how things have always been. I think people are starting to understand now how, like, made up that is.
Yeah.
And how, like, you know, and I'm seeing it in Parliament now, you know, I was even under this assumption that, oh, well, once you're in Parliament, you know, there'd be like all these checks and balances to make like really wise decisions. And what you actually see is people just turning up and making the shit up.
Just shooting from the hip.
Shooting from the hip. You don't necessarily need any evidence. You don't necessarily need to have even talked to the community that you're making like serious decisions about. You just do it.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's okay, but I like people to know that, to like feel empowered in themselves, to like, you know, fight for those basic fundamentals that we totally take for granted, like democracy, like evidence-based decision making, like having Te Tiriti o Waitangi as like upheld as our founding document. Like, we can't take that kind of stuff for granted, and we do.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think that we might be at time, which is
Nice.
crazy. But yeah, is there any like little motto, any saying, any like one liner kind of piece of advice that you would give to people, or that like, you know, a key message from you that you would want our listeners to kind of...
Oh my gosh. Okay. One thing I really like to remind people of is like never underestimate the importance of stating the bleeding obvious.
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah, we need clean, safe drinking water. We need a stable planet. We need soils where we can grow food or raise livestock. Like, we've just totally lost sight, or like that we should care about each other, that we should have a, you know, community, society, economy that actually cares for people. Like, I think if more of us really thought about how we feel and how we want the world to be, and then like acted on it, man.
Without putting it in the too hard basket, eh? Like there, yeah.
It's not too hard.
That is a great point. Like people say that they might have these values, and a lot of them are actually just like passed on from our parents and grandparents and that sort of thing in terms of these are my core values or whatever. But I think that that's such a powerful statement that you've just said. Like you're actually going to kind of hold yourself accountable to that and be like, okay, well, if that's important to me, what am I doing about that? Like, not just like, yep, I have my own little garden at my own house and that sort of thing, but what can I be doing in my community and a little bit wider, and who could I be talking to get a little bit more traction, and how deeply important is it, eh?
Yeah.
Because there's just so much more to life than like getting up in the morning, going to mahi, getting your wages, going home, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
I read this thing recently, which it was like, you know, people often say, and I'm a parent myself now, so, you know, it kind of resonates with me, but people say like, you know, I would die for my kids. And it's like, oh, you'd just die. Like, how about like you actually live for them? You know, because dying in a sense is like easy. You just die and then you're dead. But what about like living for them? What about actually like making really good decisions, or making sure that you are setting up the world for their future? Like, that takes guts, and it takes a bit more. And yeah, I just can't wait, and I believe it's going to happen, that like we as like a collective group of humans are going to actually evolve. We're actually going to like figure out that like, yeah, we can't keep like harming ourselves in our environment. Like, we're just hurting ourselves.
So silly and short-sighted, eh? Well, I want to say thank you. I feel a little bit like, oh, it's so annoying. Like an hour seems like a long time, but it just flies by really fast, eh? And we didn't even talk about like your journey as a mum and how you managed to make that work with having such a like full-on career and that sort of thing. So I would love if you'd come back one day for like part 2 of this conversation. But yeah, I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I feel so lucky. Like Maru, he obviously met you last year. He said, he's like, you're going to love her. Like you guys, he's like, I can imagine you guys actually being friends, but I think that like you should get her on the podcast and stuff. And so I'm so glad that we were actually able to make this work. And yeah, thank you for the vibe, the information, the energy that you've brought today. You're obviously a powerhouse. And yeah, like also getting you on the show in say like 12 months time would be really cool. So we can talk about some of the mahi that you've been able to like be part of and, you know, some of the outcomes that you might have been able to achieve like within that space and stuff too.
Like making it a one-term government, looking forward to that.
Yeah, exactly. So to our listeners, thank you very much, and to you from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Ka kite.
Bye.